Hello, hello, and welcome back to another year of chaos, of clownery, and bad alliteration. Now, I'm not very good at doing things in moderation, and so in 2021, I read 164 books. You know, some people deal with a breakup by having a glow-up or a hoe phase. Not me. You choose looks, I choose books. Thank you very much. So I actually filmed another video where I went through every single book that I read in 2021 and reviewed them in one sentence each. But today I wanted to dedicate a whole video to my absolute favourites, the creme de la creme, and give them the love and praise and RESPECT that they deserve. So let's start with some honourable mentions. These are some absolute bangers that I read this year that didn't quite make my top list. So we have Kafka on the Shore, Convenience Store Woman, Luster, The House Guest, Kim Jae-young born 1982, Gold Dust, Call Me By Your Name, and Exciting Times. I loved these books. My compliments to the chef. But now, on to the top 12. In no particular order, because these are all 6 out of 5 stars. They're all wonderful. So, firstly, we have Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell. This won the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2020 and won my heart in 2021. I'm pretty sure I first heard it recommended on a podcast, and I knew immediately just from hearing a description of it that it was going to be my cup of tea. And it turned out to be my whole damn kettle, because I loved it. It's basically a book about the members of the Shakespeare family who history often glosses over. William Shakespeare is there, but he's never called on by name. And his anonymity allows for the spotlight to instead be shifted to his wife and his children. And it's a real vindication of them and a celebration of what they did and who they were. And so it's a portrait of messy family dynamics, as well as loss and grief, and you get such a fascinating insight into what life would have been like for them at the time. But also, as well as all of that, the prose is just completely and utterly stunning. This book is bursting at the seams with lyrical writing and vivid descriptions which draw on all of your senses. And I think that detailing mundane experiences and everyday occurrences in full Technicolor, like Maggie O'Farrell does, just makes them so palpable, which means you experience every emotion and sense that the characters are feeling. And as a result, when they then go through heartbreak and heartache, you feel it too, and as a result this book is devastating and winding. I wish I could witness the world through Maggie O'Farrell's eyes all the time, but I'm so grateful that she gave us this little glimpse into it. So with each of these books I'm going to read you a quote so that you can get an idea of the writing style. So here's one of my favourites. What is given may be taken away at any time. Cruelty and devastation wait for you around corners, inside coffers, behind doors. They can leap out at you at any time, like a thief or brigand. The trick is never to let down your guard, never think you are safe, never take for granted that your children's hearts beat, that they suck milk, that they draw breath, that they walk and speak and smile and argue and play. Never for a moment forget they may be gone, snatched from you, in the blink of an eye, borne away from you like thistledown. Imagine being able to write like that. Insanity. I rest my case. This is the kind of writing that reminds me why I love literature so much, and also really heavily inspired me with my own writing career and what I want to write in the future. So, speaking of careers actually, now is the perfect time to talk to you about today's sponsor of this video, and that is Bright Network. Now, Bright Network is this perfect platform to gain all the knowledge and guidance that you need to get yourself a grad scheme or an internship. And right now, at the beginning of a new year, is the perfect time to start thinking about your goals and your plans for the future, both long and short term, you know. New year, new career. I actually joined Bright Network when I was a university student, so this is a completely personal recommendation as well, because I found their website so useful when it came to finding opportunities or getting career advice, especially when it came to CV writing, interview prep, assessment days. And the best part is it is completely free for all students and provides you with really valuable support when it comes to events and jobs and internships, which can open so many doors for you. So they also have loads of free courses that you can do, whether that's learning about key industries, general interview prep, or things that can boost your CV like coding. So I cannot recommend this enough if you want to kickstart your career in 2022, get a foot in the door, or find the perfect role for you. Sign up to the Bright Network using the link down below in the description box. And so a massive shout out to the Bright Network for A, sponsoring this video, but B, just being a great platform that I have personally used and appreciated. And actually, speaking of my time at university, that brings me on to another favourite book that I read in 2022, which is Loveless by Alice Oseman. This is such a special book which invites you you in to learn about asexuality and being aromantic. And these were terms that, before reading this book, were completely new to me. I was definitely aware of them, but I didn't know much about what they actually meant. But then the point is, nor does the central protagonist of the book. She is learning the terminology and the definitions and the nuances at the exact same time and speed as the reader themselves. So even if you don't personally identify with those labels, you still learn so much. And you can literally see that I was gripping it so tightly that some of the pages have actually fallen out. I'm so grateful for reading this because I think it's going to make me a much better friend and ally in the future. And Alice Oseman just masterfully creates this really open and warm and safe space to be educated. And so I think the character's development, where she is being exposed to new experiences and unlocking words and labels to explain the ways that she feels, makes your understanding as a reader so much more nuanced. So I'm really pleased to have read this book for that reason, but also this book is set at Durham University, which is where I did my undergrad degree. And Alice Oseman lived on the same street as me, took the same subject as me, and graduated the year that I arrived. So I definitely have a very special place in my heart for this book because it made me feel all types of nostalgic. And there's something incomparable about reading a book where you know all the street names and you can map out the geography of where characters are moving and visualize everything that's being described from memory. And this book addresses a lot of Durham quirks and traditions, and so I just loved it. But still, anyone could enjoy this book, especially if you're a university student, because it's also a study on friendship and coming of age and human communication, as well as jealousy and imposter syndrome and misunderstanding and realizing when you're the one in the wrong. In the end, that was the problem with romance. It was so easy to romanticize romance because it was everywhere. It was in music and on TV and in filtered Instagram photos. It was in the air, crisp and alive with fresh possibility. It was in falling leaves, crumbling wooden doorways, scuffed cobblestones, and fields of dandelions. It was in the touch of hands, scrawled letters, crumpled sheets, and the golden hour. A soft yawn, early morning laughter, shoes lined up together by the door, eyes across a dance floor. I could see it all the time, all around, but when I got closer, I found nothing was there. So I'd say this definitely comes under the category of YA, but it's just all about self-acceptance, so endearing, so empowering, and bloody brilliant. Okay, the next book is a recent read, and that is Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson, because holy moly, this is divine. The writing just flows so smoothly. I was drinking it up. Every word in this short little novel is perfectly chosen, and the sentences just dance across the page. For a debut novel especially, it is so tender and vulnerable, and it just feels like it comes directly from the soul. And so Open Water explores modern masculinity and romance, but also police brutality, racial profiling, and the black body in modern Britain. And also music, specifically rap music, is a huge motif in this book. It is literally the soundtrack to the character's existence. And I loved the way it explores this really visceral response to art. And every bit of dialogue and every bit of prose is just so meticulously pieced together. I just think it's a masterclass in writing. It is written in the second person, which I think some people may find a little bit jarring at first, but the overall effect it builds is so immensely powerful. Such an awesome up-and-coming author. I will literally read anything he puts out next, whether that's a shopping list or a novel. As with a lot of these books, I underlined so many great quotes, but I really loved this section about reading, which I think is especially appropriate to this video. The rest of the day, a blanket draped over you, poring over the pages of a novel. Zadie Smith's NW. I love her writing, her mother says. She's my favourite writer. NW is the book I return to most. Perhaps that is how we should frame this question forever. Rather than asking what is your favourite work, let's ask what continues to pull you back. And that quote makes me think of this next book, and that is No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. And the reason that quote reminds me of this book specifically is because I didn't necessarily love reading this. I didn't think it was my favourite reading experience. At times I found it a little bit fractured and maybe even too niche, because it's about this very specific time in 2017 Twitter culture, but it is a book that just continues to pull me back. I cannot stop thinking about it. This book is living in my head rent-free, and the title is no longer even correct. No one is talking about this. I can't shut up about it. It's a book of two halves, so like I said, the first half is all about internet culture, but written from the perspective of someone who has a real affection for it and actually genuinely uses these platforms. And that means that her dissection and criticism of social media is so much beyond the surface level criticism that we normally see. Patricia Lockwood writes about how there is always a discourse on social media, how everyone is always trying to sort of out-nuance each other. And so it's made up of lots of vignettes and social media-sized quips. So you can kind of see how it's structured right there. Oh, and I want to find you a specific section to read. Capitalism. It was important to hate it. even though it was how you got money. Slowly, she found herself moving toward a position so philosophical even Jesus couldn't have held it, that she must hate capitalism while at the same time loving film montages set in department stores. Politics. The trouble was that they had a dictator now, which, according to some people, white, they'd never had before. And according to other people, everyone else, they had only ever been having, constantly, since the beginning of the world. And then, after that, the second half of the book is about a family tragedy and the private grief and suffering that she endures. And so we have this really fascinating contrast and juxtaposition between the ultra-public sphere of social media, where there's always a discourse, and the deeply personal reality that she wakes up to every day, where no one is talking about this. And when you're so used to being on platforms where opinions are being fired everywhere and people are out nuancing each other, it's very disarming to suddenly be going through something entirely alone. It's unfathomable to her that there's not someone there to give her a hot take on the situation and quote RT. So as a book to read, I wasn't like, oh my god, I can't put this down, this is so captivating. But as a piece of art, I think it is phenomenal and something that keeps pulling me back. And it's such a product of the moment as well. So, on to the next book. This one is Piranesi. What a strange, peculiar, and singular book this is. It's not like anything else I've ever read, like at all. And so the author, Susanna Clarke, in like 2004, published a book called Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is a fat book. It's a mammoth. She then didn't release another novel for 16 years and came back with this tiny little thing. So it's kind of scary what she's capable of. And this is a masterpiece. Piranesi is essentially a study in solitude. It's obscure, but so haunting. There's reference to mythology and Plato and the Chronicles of Narnia. It's kind of the style of soft fantasy that I really enjoy. And this, unlike the previous book, is one that will make you want to just cancel all of your plans and just sit and pore over it. The title, Piranesi, is an allusion to an 18th century Italian artist who was really known for his observational skills, and this book is all about identity and perception, and I'm being quite deliberately vague about the plot here because I feel like it's something that you just have to experience, and I think that the less you know going in, the better. And I'm really pleased that this won the Women's Prize because I think it will put this book into more people's hands, because it's a tricky one to explain, especially without ruining it. And so I'm glad that it has the kind of authority and validation of winning a prize so that people do pick this very powerful book up. And I can't quite express how jealous I am that some of you get to read this for the first time, because I would sell my soul to the devil to get to do that again. So this is intense, but phenomenal. Okay, this is a book that I would be more likely to recommend to everyone ever, and that is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. It's about twin sisters who are black but could pass as white, and one chooses to pass as white and one doesn't, and from that point, their lives completely diverge. So we witness how it impacts their lives, but also the next generation of their children's lives. And there's twists and turns, but also really awesome trans representation, and just so much more. We watch as these characters navigate motherhood, identity, small town mentality, belonging, and also loneliness. It's a very nuanced analysis and allegory about colorism. And I'm always fascinated by books which explore, the same set of events, but from two different perspectives. So we can see how decisions and mistakes are perceived by each party, because nothing is ever straightforward. So, The Vanishing Half, I'd highly recommend. Oh, and let me give you a quote. "A town always looked different once you'd returned. Like a house where all the furniture had shifted 3 inches. You wouldn't mistake it for a stranger's house, but you'd keep banging your shins on the table corners." And so, another book that I would highly recommend is this one. This is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. The concept is that there's this coffee shop in Tokyo where if you sit at a specific seat, you can travel back in time to have one last conversation with a loved one. There's a bunch of complicated rules, but the basic idea is that you can't change the future and you can only talk to that person for as long as your cup of coffee stays warm. And this is what I mean by soft fantasy that I really enjoy, because the premise relies on some sort of fantastical element, but ultimately the story is just about humanity. And the elements of fantasy just facilitate the human analysis that we then get, by giving them opportunities and scenarios that wouldn't normally happen in our day-to-day lives. Kind of like a what would you do situation, but still tapping into real emotions. And that's just a personal preference. Like, I'm just not really into stories about distant planets and fake battles and overly complex world building that only really matters within the context of the story. yes, I am in directing Dune, but I love dissections of human behaviour and the way that we collide in the real world. So anyway, in here we have such interesting dynamics between characters, like a mother meeting the daughter that she never got to know. We have someone receiving a letter from their husband just before he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and loads more. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's simple and minimal and very kind of whimsical, but also very moving. And although it's quite slow and character driven, there's just so much heart in this book. Water flows from high places to low places. That is the nature of gravity. Emotions also seem to act according to gravity. When in the presence of someone with whom you have a bond and to whom you have entrusted your feelings, it is hard to lie and get away with it. The truth just wants to come flowing out. This is especially the case when you're trying to hide your sadness or vulnerability. It is much easier to conceal sadness from a stranger or from someone you don't trust. Next up, we have Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I am a proud member of the Sally Rooney Defence League. I would fight for this woman. I think she's brilliant, and I've learned so much about how to craft believable characters from her writing. So much thought goes into these characters to make them feel tangible, down to even the fact that one character has a glitch on his phone where every time he opens a specific app, his music pauses. Like, she thinks of everything. It's just so precise, and I feel like Beautiful World, Where Are You is a really mature departure from her previous works, but also still just glimmering with her characteristic style. In this book, we have conversations about climate anxiety, class consciousness, and language, and I think it's her most natural integration of big ideas from little normal characters. Ultimately though, it's personal relationships and love and friendship and sex that drives this novel, and that the characters navigate as they try to identify the beauty in the big scary world. And one of the characters in here, called Alice, is a young novelist, and so as a result we get to see Sally Rooney's kind of meditation on her role in the literary landscape. And so with that, she essentially poses the question, are books that are just about sex and relationships and love frivolous and privileged and unnecessary? Or in actual fact, has the past year of lockdowns and social isolation proved that personal human connection is one of the most important things in our lives? And since it's so crucial to our existences, why the hell shouldn't you explore it in art? So I thought this was profound and dazzling in its ordinariness, and just so perceptive. It also ends in the pandemic, which gave me goosebumps when I read it. And my theory, my personal theory, is that Sally Rooney is going to write the pandemic book, like the definitive novel that ends up in the canon as the book that describes this crazy world event that we've all been through, just like The Wasteland did 100 years ago. I mean, no pressure to Sally, but we'll see. Also, you may have noticed that the cover of this book is usually blue, mine is pink, and that's because I was very, very kindly sent an advanced copy of it, and this is my prized possession, to be honest with you. Like, if my house was burning down, I think I'd save this and the dog. Although not necessarily in that order. So let's read a little quote, shall we? Maybe we're just born to love and worry about the people we know, and to go on loving and worrying even when there are more important things we should be doing. And if that means the human species is going to die out, isn't it in a way a nice reason to die out? The nicest reason that you can imagine. Because when we should have been recognising the distribution of the world's resources and transitioning collectively to a sustainable economic model, we were worrying about sex and friendship instead, because we loved each other too much and found each other too interesting. And I love that about humanity. And in fact, it's the very reason I root for us to survive, because we are so stupid about each other. So thank you, Sally Rooney, for that treasure. The next book is The Song of Achilles, which I just can't find my copy of anywhere. But I read this book in the first week of 2021, and I haven't stopped talking about it since, to be honest with you. It's called The Song of Achilles because I've been singing its praises this whole time. So it's a Greek mythology retelling which just shattered my heart into tiny pieces. And I feel like a lot of people are intimidated by this book because of the subject area being Greek mythology. But every single person and god and creature is introduced in the novel as a self-contained character. So they're fully explained, and it's not snobby or assuming that you already have prior knowledge. It's very accessible. And overall, it's a book about love and friendship and battle and legacy. But just be prepared for the final few pages of your copy of the novel to be water damaged from your tears. Honestly, did I finish that book, or did it finish me? I don't even know. And I wrote down one of my favourite quotes on my laptop, so I'll read that to you. Perhaps it is the greater grief, after all, to be left on earth when another is gone. And the whole book is just as beautiful and exquisite as that, so definitely read it. It's worth the hype. Right, do you want another one? Another one that will rip your heart out, stamp on it, run it over with a car, and then crash into it with a meteor from space? Because that's what this is. This is A Little Life. This is a book that I think that you should definitely approach with caution, because if you were to write a list of trigger warnings for this book, it would probably be longer than the book itself. And she's chunky, to be fair. But basically, Hanya Yanagihara introduces you to these 4 people who you build such an affection for, and then she just destroys them. And everyone I know who has read this has had such a strong emotional response to it. Like, when they feel joy, you feel that euphoria as well. But when things go wrong, holy hell, you feel every ounce of that crushing sadness alongside the characters too. And it's well documented on this channel that I usually have big book fear, but I couldn't get enough of this, and I actually think that the length of this book is part of what makes it so special, because you really get to spend time with these people, and that allows for a really complex character study. And I think this takes place over about 60 years, but crucially, there's no cultural or historical landmarks, so the only way you see time passing is by Thanksgivings, birthdays, Christmases. And that really helps with the pacing, because by not having to explain how the world is changing over those 60 years, you just really get to focus on the characters. But also it makes the book evergreen. It feels like it's happening right now. So it's an emotional decathlon laced with pain and suffering and profoundly sad, and just so vividly written that you forget that there's even a page with writing on between you and the characters, because they feel so real. It feels like their lives are unfolding right in front of your eyes. I have seen some people refer to this as torture porn or things like that, but I think that's quite reductive to people who do go through intense amounts of trauma and do endure a life of extreme tragedy. So I just thought this was great. And so to give you an example from one of the many pages that I've underlined, why wasn't friendship as good as a relationship? Why wasn't it even better? It was 2 people who remained together day after day, bound not by sex or physical attraction or money or children or property, but only by the shared agreement to keep going, the mutual dedication to a union that could never be codified. And there's lots of other great quotes just like that one, so check it out if you dare. Right, we're almost there. This is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment. Taylor Jenkins Reid had me in the palm of her hand in 2021, because I swear she laces the pages of her books with crack. Basically about a Hollywood starlet who's been keeping gossip magazines in business throughout her whole career, but she's in later years been very, very private. That is until a young journalist is given the call up, having been personally invited by this superstar, Evelyn Hugo, to help her write her memoir of her life and finally come clean about all of the scandals and the misunderstandings that have occurred in her career. The book is very heartwarming, fast-paced, completely vibrant, and there's a huge twist that made my jaw drop so much that I swear I could taste the carpet. Truly, this wrecked me. It's a book that gets so much hype, but it deserves all of it, and it completely lives up to expectation and then some. So I would highly recommend that everyone picks up a copy of this book. Sometimes reality comes crashing down on you. Other times reality simply waits patiently for you to run out of the energy it takes to deny it. And finally, in my favourite books that I read in 2021, last but definitely not least, The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. I really enjoyed reading quite a lot of translated Japanese fiction this year, specifically because I love the microscopic character studies that they do, and this was such a standout. It's completely spellbinding. By the way, as you can probably tell, I'm very much a characters over plot kind of guy. Like, no plot, just vibes. Is great for me. But The Housekeeper and the Professor is about a man who has an 80-minute memory, and he used to be a maths professor. And though his memories are very hazy, the one thing that he has completely clung on to is his knowledge of maths. And the way that numbers are described in this book is so illuminating and exciting, to the point where even for me, as someone who doesn't care about maths at all, I found it really endearing and engaging. And so I'd highly recommend allowing yourself to slip into the warmth of this book for a little bit and letting it just embrace you. The professor never really seemed to care whether we figured out the right answer to a problem. He preferred our wild, desperate guesses to silence. And he was even more delighted when those guesses led to new problems that took us beyond the original one. He had a special feeling for what he called the correct miscalculation, for he believed that mistakes were often as revealing as the right answers. I thoroughly enjoyed the curiosity of this book and the passion for learning. It's infectious, in a good way. Probably the only time you'll hear me talk about something being infectious in a good way in 2022, but I thought this was great. So, those are the top books that I just completely adored in 2021. I would absolutely love it if you could comment down below letting me know what your favourite book of the year was so that I can get started on that 2022 TBR. And I've already read some brilliant things this year, so it's going to be a good year for reading, at least. It's going to be a good year for reading. So, thank you so much for watching this video. A massive shout out, of course, to the Bright Network for sponsoring it, and the link is down below. Make sure you sign up to open doors for yourself and your career. Make sure you press subscribe if you're new around here. I'd love to have you in 2022, and I'll be back very, very soon with a brand new video. So all the best, stay in touch, have a wonderful day, and goodbye!